We're good.
Hey, guys. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you being here. Always, always, always. Today, we're talking about facilities.
It's going to be good.
Like the facilities?
Any facility.
Any facilities.
Yeah. Small, large.
But not the facilities.
Not the facilities, but, you know, any facility.
But the facility.
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
I'm picking it up.
You're picking up what I'm laying down?
Yeah, kind of.
Kind of. Just a little slow on the uptick?
I guess so, yeah.
You need more coffee, man.
I haven't had it yet today.
What? That's like sacrilegious.
I know, it's terrible.
You need coffee.
I do.
We all need coffee.
I do.
Okay. And we all need hemp. We all need CBD.
Yesterday,
yes.
I didn't have a cup of coffee until, must have been like 3 p.m. And I think it was really bad. I was like, what is happening to me?
Did you get a headache? Were you shaking?
I had a headache. I was like, am I coming down with something? And then I remembered.
You remembered.
I hadn't had my coffee.
I need caffeine.
And that's what I did. I had it. It was so wonderful.
It was like euphoria set in. Just like you guys, euphoria sets in. We're here. We're happy you're here. If you're new here, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
If you are new here, there's a red button, reconnect at the top. It does not take you out. This is one of those simple things. Just reconnect and it'll refresh your screen right there in place. This is a fun and safe place. Ask your questions, lots of questions. And there will be poll questions set up as we go. Introduce yourself in the chat if you would. Let us know if you're a farmer, grower, chemist, investor, lawyer. Mel was on last week.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, he told us he was like gained 40 pounds on the camera.
I suppose.
Whatever. Anyway, thank you for being here. No holds barred questions all the time, simple or tough. Join the chat in the questions. Invite your friends. There will be a replay. There will be a replay. There will be a replay.
There will be a replay?
That is the biggest question we get.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Most frequent. We have resources, live tour, CBD jam sessions, advanced extraction guide, mini course libraries on its way.
Right.
And my gosh, this guy is prolific.
Just a second.
You're amazing.
Next week.
Yes.
Can we, I hate to.
I know, I waited till the end. I thought, do it, go.
Pretty good. Okay, so we've been working on all these calculators. We kind of built it up. And people are really, they've been, can we get the calculators? Can we get the calculators? We keep on, it's probably a big deal for us. Okay. So,
should I hold my breath?
So then there was, we made all these calculators and then I needed to add some things to it. And then we needed to make sure the wording was correct and everything. And so I've been
No. Wasn't wording. It wasn't pretty enough for you guys.
I've been tinkering with it. And then we added like graphs and stuff so it'll automatically graph for you. So next week, we're going to spend the entire hour, touring our calculators. And that's going to be so awesome.
That is awesome. So we're going to tour the calculator library next week. It's the only library you'll be so excited to tour.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be awesome. And it does have those funky graphs that he had that kind of do whatever, right?
Yep. We're going to go over operating costs. We're going to have how to make a tincture calculator, how to, do simple calculations, how to estimate, yields from your field, yields from isolate, yields from everything.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
This has been good.
Really good.
We'll be able to exhale next time. Calculator libraries galore. We're doing it. We're on.
Yeah. It's gonna be fun.
Well done.
Send the word out too, because anybody, on average, we get 50 to 60 people on here, that are watching at any given time, and we get a lot of new people in. So there's and sometimes people, they'll. So spread the word. Anyway, yeah.
Perfect.
We'll put it out on Instagram.
Yeah, send that out.
Right, Jared?
Bring people.
Yeah, all right.
And there's winners. Winner chicken dinner. This week's winner is D. Parker in Kentucky. Congratulations, D. Won a Holus CBD prize pack of roll-on muscle soother and some CBD body lotion.
What was that?
D. Parker.
All right.
D-E-E.
D. Parker.
Not just an initial D.
D. Parker.
D. Parker.
All right. That's pretty awesome.
And Aaron, I agree with you. The Library of Congress rocks totally.
It does. I love it.
And I'm a library hound, right?
I like the smell of old books.
Yeah. And when I do too.
Yeah, they're pretty, just the older they are, the better.
And unexploded bombs, apparently.
I have some of those books where the pages are actually kind of like, on the edges. They're
just
all, yeah.
They don't match.
Yeah. In fact, we should have a book episode. No, that would be totally
that is
off
the
topic,
second,
but it'd be fun.
The most asked question is, what book did you refer to? What book what was that? Resources. So we're trying to get those up and get those going. So yes, libraries rock. And every time I think about that, I think of the Music Man.
The Music Man.
Yeah, Marion the Librarian.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't.
I have to.
That was like a dismissive.
No. I have to feign like, oh, I know what he's talking about. Should I know what he's talking about?
No. Okay. And if you're out there and you know the Music Man, just start singing. Okay. We'll sing along. We'll do a sing along. Karaoke day. Okay.
Is the Music Man related to the Muffin Man? Because I know that one.
No.
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 Okay, all right.
There's trouble right here in River City.
Okay.
That starts with T, that rhymes with P, and that stands for...
All right.
Okay, sorry. I could just go on. It's fun stuff. Okay, thank you for being here. We will get to something relevant in a moment. But calculator library, is that cool? Yeah, that's right, exactly. Okay, now, in this episode, we're talking about facilities.
It's going to be fun.
Okay. We're going to make sure that your hemp processing facility, and on my sheet of paper, it does say hemp.
Let me see. Oh, it does.
So we must have emphasized hemp.
Yeah, because it's in there twice.
It's twice. Hemp. Okay, hemp processing facilities is proportioned properly and everything, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is the biggest question? Where do I put my facility?
Yeah.
Where?
Well,
in a field?
Okay, in
the middle of a city?
Yeah, preferably away from everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is such a thing as, selecting your site or the area of where you're going to process to have beneficial aspects. And the big benefit really comes in your permitting environment. And okay, so suppose I want to have a facility and I want to locate it in, say, downtown Los Angeles. Oh. We know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I remember that. You see that explosion that happened?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yikes.
By the way, that would never happen with CO2. Just so you guys know. So there's not even a risk. In fact, that if the CO2 had leaked out, it would have put the fire out. So that's just to let you guys know that.
Oh, good. Note to self.
Yeah, note to self. Okay, so where do you want to place your facility? Well, I think that it's in general, if you have the more urban area that you're going to be in, the more requirements are going to be placed on you and enforced in your facility, which is going to drive up your facility costs, and it's also going to drive up your engineering. It's going to drive up your architectural. I have mentioned this before that, as you increase the amount of solvents that you have in your facility, your occupation basically changes, okay? And what that means is that you have to add more infrastructure items to your facility. So it's really good if you can, first of all, limit the solvents that are in your facility, and then second of all, locate your facility in a suburban area or in an industrial park, possibly even preferably where you don't have, for example, neighbors or adjoining neighbors, because those always create some sort of, complication. So you always want to try to reduce the complication. You can save hundreds of thousands of dollars just by locating in an area that is not hyperactive when it comes to applying every possible requirement known to man. Like for the other thing that would really kind of help you a lot is if you hired an engineering firm that didn't also build refineries, okay? Because, what do you have, 30 milliliters of Everclear in your bar? Okay, this is an NFPA class 1 room with a C1D2, C1D D1, and they'll start flipping off all of the beautiful specifications and everything for that. Because that's what engineers do.
Is that before or after we flip them off?
I don't know. I think that was, we flipped them off after.
Yeah, okay. Just checking.
Yeah, but anyway, I just think that it's really important in terms of location that you find some location that is in a good permitting environment. The other thing that you need to think about is things like turnaround and parking, and making sure that you have turnarounds for your semi trucks.
Oh yeah,
because like
you need room.
You need room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't have a place that a semi truck can get in, or if the dock height is not like a standard dock height, like if you have a half dock height, I can tell you that produces so much problems. Like, like you are going to rue the day you had that, half dock height in. So if you have a good docking system, that's really important. You have to have a place where your semis can get in. So those are all location and site specific things. The other thing that you really got to think about with site and where it's located is, do you have any covenants and restrictions associated with the site that you're on?
Oh, yeah.
So that really is, okay, if you have a building, or if you're renting or leasing a space, and they're in order for the building to have gone up in that location, they have signed some sort of site or restriction or covenant with the city or county or municipality that it's in. And sometimes those can be really difficult to deal with because, okay, you need to put in, your utilities. Oh, well, you can't have your transformer pot on this side of the building. So you have to go to the other side of the building, which triples all the wire that you have to use.
Oh, yeah.
So things like
Huge
that.
cost.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, there's no place for the switch gear over there, so that's not going to really work. Or with CO2, typically you want to buy, like bulk systems and install bulk systems because it's super cheap if you do that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's requirements like seismic requirements, or those are requirements for installation, but even more so than that, where it's located. Like, okay. It can't be on one side of the building because they don't want it to look bad.
Okay.
There are sometimes you can talk to the city council, or you can do petitions and things like that. All of that is like timing, and then get variants. It's like, okay, we'll put up a tree. We'll put up 5 trees around there, and but sometimes you don't know about those requirements. If you don't know about them ahead of time,
Sure.
You kind of might not. You might come up with a different answer as to your location.
Sure.
So that's just a general.
I think
answer
that's
for you.
that's where everything starts, is
Yeah.
where you're located. And I think that's a good point. Locating rural or suburban is huge.
Right.
Making sure that you're in a place that is not over cumbersome with permitting requirements.
Right.
Because we've run into so many places where all of a sudden the engineers and the consultants get involved, and oh my gosh.
Yeah, basically what their job is they're there to make sure that you're aware of every requirement under the sun.
Yeah.
And every requirement that they put on your facility is going to be anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000, and probably even more than that.
Yeah.
So okay, you see the big list of requirements. It's not that you shouldn't be aware, but in a lot of jurisdictions they don't care about it.
Yeah. It's not relevant to that community.
Not relevant to that community, right? So you would get a if you were in downtown Los Angeles or downtown San Diego, downtown Houston, or in a very, very close to any other major metropolitan city. Of course, there's a lot of people there, and the inspectors they're enforcing more of the requirements than normal. So,
okay.
Yeah.
The other thing, as we're talking about the location, the biggest question I have is, and you mentioned this about power and where it's located with regard to the facility, but the biggest question we get is, what kind of power do we need? How much?
Yeah.
What do we need?
Right. Well, that really depends on what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, if you want to start off with just like processing, okay, like a processing facility, and what you want to do is you want to have like a drying facility, and you want to shuck and buck stuff, and then you want to prepare it for people to sell out. That a lot of people do that. They like create drying facilities and things like that. That's actually a really great place to start, because that solves a problem that the farmer has. They can buy like the big equipment and everything, but sometimes they just want to deliver like whole plants, and then that shucked and bucked material, which is basically all the stems and sticks have been removed, and just the flour is in the bag. It's all ground up, all dried. Here you go, ready to go. A lot of people like to have that, just like pre-processing business.
Sure.
And typically you need a warehouse that is, in that case, is highly like humidity controlled. Okay.
Sure.
And obviously it's really hard to dry things if you have a very humid environment. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure you have some dehumidification if you're in a very humid environment. It also depends on what time of the year. So a lot of people are doing this processing, say in October, November, December, where basically the moisture goes out of the air because it's cooler. That's kind of, maybe you don't need to have that.
Sure.
So I think So the question about how much power you have really is driven by what the scale of your facility is going to be, right? So you are, and that's really where you really need to have a planning session associated with a scaled up plan.
Sure.
Okay, does that make sense? So what you're trying to do is say, okay, well, look, in my mind's eye, I feel that we're going to start off with, say, 500 pounds a day, okay? And then we're going to work our way up over the next couple of years or 3 years to, say, a ton a day or to 2 tons a day or whatever you got. What you do then is you kind of take that 3-year picture and you calculate how big a facility you need for that 3-year picture. Or if your horizon is 5 years on your business plan, fine. Then set that goal, and then back calculate how much power you're going to need, how many units you're going to create, what your products are going to be, and create your forecast, basically business forecast off of that. That is going to basically drive the requirements for your facility. So just some rules of thumb. We had, let me see here, we started off in our building, we have 80,000 square feet here. We had 750 kVA. And we had to upgrade our power. We put in another, I think, 2,000 kVA in here, just because we didn't want to do it again. And our horizon, we kind of looked at our horizon, 5 years from now. Said, okay, well, we're going to want to be, running at basically, 10 tons a day. And, we don't actually run 5 tons a day every day. So we run much less than that every day. And we have a 5 ton per day capacity. So right now we're tooled up in terms of power and electricity for that. And then we built for the bigger.
You've got
amount.
Expansion built in.
We got expansion built in.
That's
because,
awesome.
to go back and do, put that all in, to dig the holes, to, take the power in from the street and all that stuff, it's expensive.
It's very expensive.
Speaking of that, with site location, that's something you need to think about. Inspect your power, okay? Find out where it is, and then find out if you needed to upgrade that power, would you need to dig up a parking lot?
Yeah.
That's a question, because I've actually seen that happen. They had to dig up the whole parking lot going across it. It cost them a small fortune just to get their power extended up.
Wow.
And it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And sometimes the power is, so you really need to go inspect it. So there's a couple things. You have your outside transformer. You can go look at the nameplate on it and says, it'll say, usually it's stamped on there or whatever, and KVA is the amount. That's kilovolts amps. So volts times amps equals watts. If you calculate, so that's what it's saying. It's 750 kilowatts worth of electricity there.
Gotcha.
So, and then from the pot, it's wired to what they call switchgear, which is on the inside. It's just a big control panel for your main power on your entire loop. Okay, so, and usually it has a big handle on it that's power on, power off. You can turn the entire facility off with just one switch. And then from there, all of the sub panels are powered. Like you'll have a 400 amp panel going to one process and then a 200 amp panel. You want to try to reduce the number of sub panels that you have because that's wire. Yep. And then, it costs a lot to put in a whole bunch of sub panels. Okay.
Yep. And it doesn't look as nice.
Right. And then also you need to have transformers. So typically that pot is coming in at, say, 480 volts, for example. There's a couple different phases of types of power. You got your delta phase and your Y phase, and that'll give you different voltages, okay? This is really sweet stuff that you got to know. I mean, you have to know this.
It is.
And
did you see my eyes glazing over?
I did. Okay. This is
like, okay.
Look at him. Watch. Look at this guy. He's laughing at me. Okay. We're getting too geeky. I get it. Okay. So no talking about delta and Y phase. Just suffice it to say. Because that will, if you want 208 power in your facility, typically it's run on 208 volts.
Sure.
Okay. That'll probably, I think that's a delta phase, and you're going to need to have, it'll come in at 480 volts and it needs to be transformed down to like 208.
Awesome.
So that's the fundamentals of power. But you really need to understand what we can do and help you with, obviously, is create a design so that you'll know how much you're going to need in a couple of years, and make sure that you have a crawl, walk, run strategy on your power related to that. And that goes also for your facility footprint, where you need your utilities, all that stuff. And really what you're doing is you're creating multiple design plans, multiple layouts, and then you're creating that 5-year layout basically, and then you're basically scaling it back to the first year. So that's the crawl, walk, run strategy. So.
And, these are primarily for processing facilities that we're talking about, but there's different power requirements for the farmer going out there.
Right.
And, Michael asked a question earlier, as he's setting up his facility for that is a startup situation right at the farm, shuck and buck and a grinder, but you would also need a dryer also at that point.
Yeah. So, well, you could do, like, a lot of people hang their plants if you have a barn. And, if you wait till October, you can look at the dew point calculations and things like that. Water just drops right out of the air, and you should be able to hang your plants. Yeah, and they'll go dry.
At harvest, and it should go.
Yeah, it'll go down to 10%.
Yep.
Moisture content in your plant. 10 to 15%, which is sufficient to, really keep the bugs from growing. Okay. If you don't do that, if you don't dry your plant, obviously, you're going to get, greater problems with microbials and things like that.
Well, and it costs more to process.
Yeah, it does.
It does, because it's heavier, because it's by poundage. A couple of other questions that have come in that may not be completely related. We do have packagers here. Jeremiah talked about, packaging, co-packing, powders, oils, and things. So that's on the other end.
We can do that in a subsequent. Yeah, I think because we should probably go over all the details of that. Maybe we can do some demonstrations and things along those lines.
So Jeremiah, we'll hit you up another time, but there are other requirements and lines and how you're doing that and what we're doing here as well for that. And then we are going to be talking, Robert, about storage as well in a moment, but I want to jump back to properly proportioning the facility and when you're for receiving for all of those things, right?
Right. Yeah. So you just want to make sure that you have that scale up plan, that you have the discussion. The planning is important and most important. The plan is going to change. But the planning aspect of it is, now that I've scaled this up in my mind and we're now looking at that larger facility, now we can see problems occurring. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a foresight thing, and you need someone there who's basically helped and done that before, so that they're taking you through, here are all the issues associated with that. Let's talk about it. At the very minimum, you're going to become aware of what's required for the next steps.
Sure.
And I think that is the key benefit of that exercise is, here's your plan, here's how many people you're going to need, but also here's my power, here's the space, here's the footprint that I'm going to need. Yeah, so things along those lines. Yeah,
I think that's critical. When you're bringing product in to a facility, are you worried about different locations or cross-contamination or?
Yeah. So a couple different things on that. Imagine in your mind's eye a box, and it's split down the center, okay? One side of the box should be related to, kind of the grinding or dusty part of it, or where all the biomass is, and the other side of the building should be the oil-facing side of it, okay? You kind of want to keep the HVAC pressure, okay? You want to keep HVAC pressure negative on that kind of the hemp processing or the hemp biomass side versus the oil side, so that there's not, for example, dust particles migrating into your packaging facility, into your extraction oil, where you're dealing with oils. You just want to try to make sure that it's negative. So that's the first rule of thumb related to that. And you really should, because if you're doing toll processing, it's really important also because some of the farmers are going to bring in their stuff and they hadn't dried it properly. And you get to the middle of the bag and it has, mold or something like that in it.
Yeah.
And
bad.
That's bad.
Bad.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that, there isn't the contamination of spores or anything that would migrate it from one side of the building to the other. So the raw materials really need to be separated.
Sure.
Now, the FDA has rules about types of separation. Okay, and so one of the things that we have seen people do in the past is they have put up like curtains, like
Sure.
industrial curtains, basically, and they're a thick rubber, and they go from floor to ceiling and all of that. The FDA does not allow you to do that if you want to have an FDA compliant facility. However, if your goal at the very beginning is basically, okay, we're not going to put up the wall, but we're going to put up the wall at a future date when we become FDA compliant.
Got it.
You can start with a curtain because the state isn't going to say yes or no to that, right?
Okay, good. That's
But
good to know.
what they are going to say, I think that the principles of separation of raw materials from finished oils, that's a really good principle to keep in mind. And when you design your facility, you want to make sure that all of the relative HVAC pressures from the hallway to each of the rooms are all designed properly so that you have where all the air is going. So it's dumping into a hallway that has negative pressure, and that's exhausted out. So when you're talking about your facilities and separation, that's the key thing to remember. Really is keep your dusty and your biomass stuff apart, or in a different building even than your processing facility.
Sure, and I think that's as walking through the facility, when you're in the grinding area, I mean, it's dusty. You want to wear,
Right.
you need to be gowned and
Right.
gowned and bound,
Right.
and social distancing back there is not adequate.
No, I guess not.
So when we're quarantining product, we want to make sure that it's adequately separated.
Right.
And is there additional separation now? We were talking about spores and molds and different things, but also, we've seen some product come in that has some significant pesticide in it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the receiving process and
Perfect.
how that's done. Okay. If you are a processor of hemp that all you're doing is you're drying and stuff like that, I think that you just have to make sure that you're not getting cross contamination from by blending or anything like that. So that having been said, when you do a receiving process, usually it'll come in super sacks, and what happens is typically your processes and procedures will then kick in. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what do we do now with this material? Well, first of all, you match the paperwork that came with the material with the license. Make sure that they have the license, all the paperwork for the C of A's associated with it, their certificates of analysis. They have all that, and that paperwork packet goes to Q&A. When it hits the dock, typically it's immediately quarantined. It's got a quarantine designation on it,
Sure.
which means that you can't use it in production until quality assurance says, hey, this meets the specifications. It's passed incoming inspection, which is usually there's a quality control step where they sample from the different bags randomly or according to their sampling plan. And then they send those off to the laboratory to verify what the C of A says. And I think that is a very important step. You can't skip it. You can't skip it because the C of A's that come in with the materials may not be applicable. They may not match what your results are. And if just for various reasons, who knows why? Sometimes in the truck as it's coming to your facility, it can all of a sudden become pesticide ridden, or all of a sudden sprout solvents in them, or things like that. Just from nothing.
Just magic.
Ex nihilo. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It
just happened. Nobody knew why.
Nobody knows why.
Yeah.
And so you want to make sure that you're not receiving those items into your facility and then contaminating everything.
Yeah.
Because what happens is you contaminate. Either your grinder can get contaminated, even though you do washes in between. So it's really important that you have specifications, input specifications.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to contracting, which we
Absolutely.
talked about last week, right? So in your contract, okay, shall be pesticide free. If it's organic, you have to send us the organic label, certification. If you're from a hemp farm, by the way, you need to send us your hemp certificate. Okay, so those are all kind of
good.
general things.
Okay.
A little off topic on the facility,
but it's good because we're allocating certain parts of the facility for different rooms. We're there, and in each of these, like either whether it's receiving, whether it's in the labs, whether it's with our solvents that we're using or what have you, are there occupancy requirements that we would have for the facility that we have to make sure we pay attention to?
Right. Okay. So this is where, let me kind of just get into this now on occupancy and classifications and building types and all of that. Okay. So I'm going to go start a hemp processing facility, and I'm going to create oils, and I'm going to make a brand, and I'm going to make lots of money. That's the promised land that we are all driving for. And so what are we going to do? We're going to go look for a building. We're going to look for a site that's outside of the city, hopefully, that is, that's not in a super dense population area. That's going to be a lower cost area to get your place done. By the way, parenthetical on that, you got to make sure that you're not too rural to the point where you can't get labor to come in and help you.
Yes.
So that's the other thing. If there's a good labor base, so that's something to think about. So then now you have a building, right? Now, if your building is all of wood structure with a wood framed, wood, roof on it and everything, you're kind of really talking about a very expensive endeavor, because to get compliancy for the CO2, it's not a problem. But as soon as you add any kind of ethanol processing in your facility, or even ethanol or any solvents, even for cleaning, that is when some of these requirements start to kick in. And basically, so there's different building types, okay? And so there's type 1, there's type 2, there's type 3, and then there's different classifications, type 1.1, type 1.2, type 1.3, you can imagine. Just go find your building. What you want to have is, if I had my druthers and I had to pick, it should be some sort of industrial building with non-combustible materials to make it. So the ceiling should be non-combustible, preferably. It should, the walls, if it's a steel building, that's the best, right? Mm-hmm. And the walls, should not have, combustible nature to them, right? So that's really what you're looking for. You're not looking for a wood building, because, you're going to need to do a lot to it to make it. So you might as well just get that. So, and then you can have a wood building that's what's called just a general industrial, light industrial occupancy. So F1, F2 occupancy. F2 occupancy is where you would have some hazards in, but not a lot of hazards. So, and there's requirements for these that are all written down in the International Building Code, which are basically adopted in various forms all across the United States. And you have you have F1, F2 occupancy, and then you have high hazard occupancy, which is H1, H2, H3. Okay, so we have a building type separate from occupancy.
Okay.
So the amount of solvents that you can have in your building, and every processing laboratory, every processing facility is going to require solvents of some kind. Small amounts, or even large amounts. As you increase the amount of solvents, your occupancy changes from, say, an F2 to an H2, which drives up your costs. Okay. And then it's a kind of a multi-stage calculation that sometimes some buildings, as they are built, are not even possible to have an H occupancy. Okay, so. Let me see here. Did that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
I see your eyes glazing over.
No, I'm good. Actually, I was chuckling at Jeremiah's comment. He said, you can't be too rural. He said, just add an RV park.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
That's good.
Sorry. So
I like it.
So yes, that was me just chuckling inside my head at Jeremiah's
no problem.
comment. No, I think that's good. Okay, so now let's take that to the next level, because one of the things that we see when you're setting up an isolate lab, for example, the biggest question that we have there is, do I need C1D2? Mm-hmm. And what does C1D2 mean?
Yeah, okay, so C1D2 is a electrical classification for a room, okay, for a space, and there are rules associated with the equipment and the amount of solvents that you can have in that room. Okay, and the type of solvent really drives the amount of solvent that you have in open use and in closed use and in storage amounts really will drive, the requirements for that room.
Okay.
So if you're going to have certain types of solvents, like, for example, butane, you're going to have a C1D1 room because it's an explosive type of material. If you have a different type of solvent like ethanol, the requirements for that room are a little less, that you need a C1D2 room.
Gotcha.
Okay, because if there's a leak or something like that, it's not necessarily going to explode, or doesn't have a high hazard of explosion as, say, like butane does.
Okay, so and what type of designation do you need for CO2?
You don't. Which is really great. So
that is great.
So yeah, for CO2, you can have an infinite amount. I know that's not possible, but you can have an unlimited amount of CO2 in your facility and still maintain whatever building type you have, and then you can also maintain whatever occupancy that you're in.
Okay.
So the only thing you'd need to think about is how much ethanol you need around for winterization.
Okay.
Right. And, if you're going to do that process, or you're just going to use your CO2 extractor to winterize, that'd be another way to do it.
So let's assume we just have a barrel, 55-gallon drum of ethanol.
Right. So there are requirements for storage, and then you have to define what the open use is and what the closed use is for each one of those buildings. Okay. And the great thing about this is we do this type of analysis for you. We have fire inspectors on staff and fire hazard analysis. So what we'll do for you is we'll take your footprint, and we'll say, okay, look, here is how much you're going to have here in this storage control area. Here's how much you're going to have in open use here. And that will drive the requirements for the occupancy, and it'll drive the requirements for, how much you can have in the facility. And also then the requirements also for the room, whether it needs to be C1D2 or C1D1 or whatever.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and that's good. And you mentioned storing the solvents.
Yeah.
Is there some special thing you have to do to store the solvents?
Yeah. I mean, there are requirements there are requirements for how much you can store per control area, and you can have a maximum of 3 control areas per occupancy.
Okay, so if I got a 55-gallon drum of ethanol, it's in a specified control area.
So 240 gallons is the number if you have a Type 2 building, which is a metal building with an F2 occupancy.
Oh, okay. Easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 240 gallons in storage, and then that's per control area, and you can have up to 3 control areas.
Okay, and that applies to the same thing, like with an isolate lab, you need pentane, for example, and you need, let's say, 20 liters.
Yeah, so pentane is a different class of solvent.
Yep.
So that has a much higher vapor pressure, which means that the requirements are more stringent for pentane.
Gotcha.
So you would have to do certain, the room that you want to design in that case you wouldn't want to have electrical power in there. Yeah, all your motors and everything would want to be air motor. You'd want to have air motors. Sure. You'd want to have spark-proof, exhaust ventilation in there. Your floors should have a floor covering that is also spark-proof and things like that, and just everything grounded. Okay, so those are some of the things that come into the engineering of it.
Gotcha.
A lot of people just buy hoods. Walk-in hoods, and they do it in the walk-in hood. It kind of is a nice way to do that. Yeah. Even a painter hood, because those are kind of already classified, so you can do them inside of there. Then you just need to exhaust that, and you can calculate what your exhaust CFM has to be based on how much you have in there. So then you come up with your inventory. You say, hey, here's how much we're going to have in here. Here's our exhaust plan, and then here's our plan for measuring how much pentane is in the air, and you hand that over to your fire inspector.
Perfect.
And also your insurance company.
Yeah. Yeah,
because they're going to ask right away, right?
Oh my gosh, that's and you want to make sure, just give them all of the right information, but don't ask what their requirements are.
Right.
right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
You want to be aware of what their requirements are, but if you chase down all of these specifications, like you mentioned earlier, if I'm in a refinery facility or park that has all these refineries, well, the inspectors are going to be tuned to having those types of parameters and requirements. So you might be subject to some of those just because of the chosen group that's there, right? The inspectors, right?
Right.
So you don't want that.
Right.
I would think.
Yep.
But so you don't go to them and say, hey, what do I need? Because all of a sudden they're going to give you a laundry list.
Right.
But if you just do it and you say, all right, this is what I know I need, then they're going to come and inspect. And if you meet it, you're good. If you need to make some adjustments, then you make adjustments.
Right.
But you're at least 99% or 95% or maybe 80%. I don't know what.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting
it
there.
depends. It's
right?
an art.
Yeah.
Right. So you.
Well, I think it's
it's
essentially it really is a kind of a negotiation that takes place.
Gotcha.
And I think that they're going to come in there and they're going to tell you what they're they're going to be focusing on what they're currently seeing elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right. So and they'll be. It doesn't mean that the rest of the code doesn't apply, but they just happen to be jazzed about that particular item. So they might go in deep on one particular area. You're like, why are they going in deep on this particular area? Well, because this guy's been zinging everybody, from a permitting standpoint or from an inspection standpoint, for the last year.
That's where he got lucky.
This is where he's finding pay dirt. He's finding pay dirt there. So
job security.
Yeah, job security, right? So
we need that, right?
Yeah.
It's not where I'm not making fun of the guys doing that. What I'm saying is when you get something there, you just have to be aware of what they're drilling down to. Right. And then you got to know how to address it.
Right.
And you make sure you got people like us who can come alongside you and help.
Right. Yeah. And addressing it in terms of that also, you almost want to have something that they can address that's easily fixable. I mean,
True.
You talk to any of the engineers who have worked on trying to get, their facilities, established. Sometimes maybe you kind of, point out the easy things and, okay, they got to have something to put in their report. So.
And that's cool. Okay,
Yeah.
So I have been asking questions, and thank you for all of your questions that are coming in. We're still here for a while, so keep the questions coming in. These are great. I know we've bounced around a bit, and I know that there's probably no rhyme or reason on the flow, so sorry
That's
about
all right.
that. So Dr. John, is there anything that we missed that you want to really cover, or that you want to come back to? I've got other questions, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't derail you completely.
No.
And Jeremiah said, "You're sorry for disrupting earlier." I said, "Yeah, no, that's my job. I disrupt everything all the time." So you're in good company.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
All right, good. So is there anything specifically you want to bring up or visit back, or do you want me to start asking more questions?
No, you can start to ask questions. Yeah, we'll just keep going through them. Sure.
Okay. So when we're talking, a lot of the facility, that we're doing is about talking about the business side of it. We're talking about flow.
Yep.
And you really want good flow. Like we started, and then we grew fast. So, there are a couple of things that I think are a little out of place in ours because we didn't have the direct, because we'll go over here and then we got to go back here. And then so there's a little bit of things that are out of order.
Yes.
But part of that too is, as you said, you want to keep the grinding and the dust over here. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to jump. Is there anything in the flow that you want to offer, whether that's from the farm, whether that's from the processing, receiving all the way to the end product, mm-hmm. or even going from there to packaging?
Well, I think that in terms of there's two basic flows. One is information flow.
Yeah.
One is material flow,
yes.
and then you have personnel flow.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about
that's three.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Not two, but that's okay. I was keeping up.
So there's three. Okay. And I think you need to think about each one of those separately.
I agree.
And map them out in your facility. And, if you're going to map out material and information flow, probably the best way to do that is value stream mapping. And that will really allow you to understand, okay, in a single page, how I'm scheduling my work, how much inventory there is in between each of the processes, how much labor, value-added labor, I'm going to need to create and meet demand, okay, which is called the tack time, okay.
Yep.
And then also, how you're really going to bring what your supply chain looks like, and how are you going to pull from the supplier, and how your customers are going to pull from you. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of different ideas there, and that's just manufacturing engineering essentially. Sure. Is all of what it is. Yeah. But typically what you want to have is, let's say you got 30 SKUs, you want to have 30 supermarkets essentially that are ready for the customer to pull from. So your customer, say you have 30 customers, you have 30 SKUs. Each customer is going to pull a SKU one per week or something like that. So if they pull from that finished goods supermarket, okay, there it is, it's done, and I'm going to pull it. Then that can create a signal going back upstream that says start to produce, and what it's producing is that SKU. That's pretty sweet. And if you can make your facility do that, what you'll find out is that your inventory is going to be reduced. Your in between each of the processes, because you'll have what's called FIFO lanes in between each of the processes, and you're going to stop at a certain area, and then everything upstream is going to stop. It's not
FIFO, first in, first out.
First in, first out, right?
Okay.
And they're used in manufacturing, and they're perfect for hemp processing facilities because you want to define and manage and limit the amount of inventory sitting around.
Right.
Okay. And because it's high
now,
value.
is that we've all heard of just in time and Kanban. Is that the same stuff?
Yeah, it kind of is. Like Kanban supermarkets is what they're typically called within value stream mapping. Yeah. And all they are is physical locations that you would put your inventory in, and you would always have a certain amount in there. You wouldn't let it build up. Now, what happens is if you have process A and process B, and process B is really slow and process A is really fast, what will happen is there'll be a huge buildup of inventory in process A and process B, right? So what you want to do is you want to balance those two processes out. And basically within hemp processing or hemp extraction, you're always going to have a series of disparate processes that you're trying to balance out with the right materials, the right equipment, the right material flow, the right information flow, so that all the inventory is kept at a low enough level.
Sure.
This is the theory. It's very hard to do in practice. You have to have a plan.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't have a plan, it will not be that way. It'll be like, okay, you're tripping over inventory. I know that a lot of people, like, they'll post pictures of an entire warehouse filled with inventory. Well, that's like an accounting nightmare. That's all that stuff is on your balance sheet, right?
Yes.
And it's got to be valued there, and that can actually put you out of business.
Absolutely. And the big thing is that the reason that you would want more inventory, the reasons that you would have a spike is if all of a sudden you've got the ability to buy that inventory at a low rate.
Right.
So it reduces your cost to have it on hand.
Right. But there's also cost to that inventory
to hold it.
And you do not want to have it in your facility at the end of the year either.
No, you want to turn. Inventory turns are key and critical.
They really are. So, I mean, I can't tell you how important that is. It's like it's the lost art of managing your balance sheet. And in fact, when you're in a processing or any type of manufacturing, it's all about controlling your inventory.
Absolutely.
If you don't, you're going to find out that all your money is sitting in the inventory. Exactly. And you're wondering, where'd all my money go? Well, all it is. It's up on the shelf.
And it's not just raw inventory when it first comes in from the farm or the manufacturer or whatever. Right. But you've got all of that inventory that starts there, but then it's all along the process. And you can have many hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, sitting in WIP
Right.
work in progress.
Right.
And that's the hidden inventory that most people don't even think about, because, well, I've got a little bit here, I've got a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, and each of those, and that adds up.
Right.
And then you've got, enough sitting over here on end inventory. And let's say you built it, but they didn't come.
Right.
Now you've got finished goods that aren't selling.
Right.
That's no turn. That's bad.
That's bad.
That's really bad.
Yeah.
So the whole just-in-time idea or Kanban
Right.
supermarkets really allow you to build what people want.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's good. It's good.
and minimize the WIP and the raw inventory
Right.
along the way.
Right. And your facilities have a huge impact on that. So you can have, the less you're moving around inventory, the better, right? So you want to design your facility, if at all possible. Sometimes it's impossible because you're working within an existing footprint, or you want to utilize some existing structure. You want to try to basically eliminate the movement of inventory around, because if you add it all up, it turns out that those are huge non-value added steps, right? And that's going to be basically a part of your cost of goods,
Well, and
which is going to reduce your gross margin, which is going to reduce your bottom line, which is going to reduce your cash flow, and you reduce the cash flow, you're going to reduce your value of your company.
Absolutely. And it's our job to help you grow your business profitably.
Yeah.
So I remember a business that I was running, and I had lots of revenue, and I just didn't realize I was losing 10 cents for every dollar I made. So the more revenue I was bringing in, the more money I was losing.
I hate it when that happens.
I know, right? I'm like, that was many, many moons ago. But
Right.
it was a very good learning experience, but very expensive.
Yeah. One thing that we should, I know we're kind of jumping around here a little bit, but I remembered something about storage facilities.
Please.
Okay, for your hemp. Okay, you want to typically with your building, you want to have high enough ceilings.
I was going to go there because a lot of people don't have the height of ceilings that we do.
Yeah, well, you want to make sure that we have a calculator. In fact, we'll go over that calculator next week.
Yeah.
For like how much you would how much hemp you would be able to put onto a pallet rack.
Okay.
Okay, and then how high and the number of pounds that you would be able to store. Okay. So I can give you some numbers here, but just suffice it to say that it has to do a lot to do with your bulk density. Mm-hmm. So if you of your material. So if you have a really like ground powdery, you're going to be able to store more per unit area than if it's just like hemp and stocks, right?
Yeah, sure.
So there's some assumptions that you need to make, but everything being equal, you want to make sure that you have say a high ceiling, and so that you can stack your hemp up on the incoming side of it. So and typically you don't want to have like 100 days or 200 days worth of inventory there to run through. What you want to have is you want to go to your suppliers and you want to say, hey, look, you just store that at your farm, and I'll take it in here at maybe if you're doing a ton a day, I want 5 tons a week. Yeah. And then you're only paying for 5 tons a week. Yep. Then that also improves your cash flow, right? Sure. So, and I'm sure a lot of farmers would be happy to deliver on a schedule.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
hey, good inventory tie-in to that.
Yeah.
And make sure that when you get these giant industrial racks, if they go up to the ceiling, make sure your forklift lifts that high.
Yeah, that's right. And that you have enough room to turn around in those in between there. So you can buy the right type of forklift too, where you don't have, doesn't need usually a very wide radius. So you can put the pallet racks closer together. But, we have different models for how much you can add into that, in terms of how much you can store. So I just want to let you know, we'll go over that next week. It'll be a lot of fun. Yep. And, we'll go over the calculator.
The calculators are going to be great.
We're just going to come up with all kinds of weird scenarios. Like,
I want to see the pretty graphs.
What if you have a bulk density of, 100 pounds per cubic inch? That would be,
Yeah, and I do know that, in the big oven that we have, the big Gemco, you want to make popcorn.
Oh, we do. Yeah.
Do we have a calculator to compute how much popcorn that would make?
And the volume of the popcorn. We should probably do that because it might blow it up. Oh, yeah. We should probably do that before we stick in 100 pounds of popcorn in there.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah.
It's all dense. Why does that look like it got hailed on from the inside?
I don't know. So we have this very large V mixer it's manufactured by a company called Gemco, and we have placed some boilers on it, so it'll go very hot. And of course, it's a mixer, so we could probably do popcorn in it. So we're going to do that someday.
He's really wanted to do that.
Yeah, we're going to do it. Are we going to do that, Jared? Oh yeah, we're going to do it. So just YouTube stuff, right? I mean, this is how we have fun with life and everything. So
Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Go check us out. We got a lot of resources on there. So shout out to social media. Thank you for being here, guys. This is awesome, Jared. You do a great job. The whole team does a great job, right? We're here.
Awesome.
We rock. Okay, so. We covered a lot of stuff today.
Yeah.
And next week we're going to do calculators.
Right.
Anything that we missed on facilities?
Yeah, I would encourage people to go to our website, go to our blog. We wrote a blog article on this, and we also have a checklist that you can download for utilities. It's just kind of a very basic one-page 40, 50 item checklist. Just go through that checklist. It's not comprehensive, okay, but it'll get you there. Yep. So go there, download it, see what you think. Share with your friends and companies. Shout us out.
So
tag
go
your
to
friends.
Extract Lab with a K.
Yep.
Just like the T-shirt right here. Extractlab.com, and then go to the blog. Go click on the blog, and then go. What is that called? The Hemp starter. What it was? 7 questions.
Oh yeah, 7 questions for startups.
For hemp startups or
Yeah,
something.
like that.
And that will get you to the blog article that Dr. John was talking about, and also it will get you that download. It'll allow you to get that download. If you have specific questions, sign up. We've got CBD jam sessions that are going on all the time. You guys are really keeping our team busy. Oh my gosh. And they last 20 minutes, no pressure, no hype, no nothing. We're there to answer your questions. Obviously we can, talk a lot about processing and facilities and move you around and get deep and find out where you're struggling and what we might have that might help you out.
Right.
So good stuff.
Good stuff. Yeah. We've been publishing guides too.
Oh yeah.
And then we've really been focusing in on FAQs. So, one of the things that we get like questions from you guys, and some of them are really, really good.
They're really
so
good.
we've been basically, I've been kind of going through there and typing out all the answers to those FAQs, and some of them are just I just got too detailed on, and I've got lost, and so they got editors and they edit them out.
I can't even imagine you getting lost
in the details, but other than that, I mean, we should be publishing those pretty soon, and so those will be there'll be a dictionary for you guys to take a look at.
Yeah, it'll be a really good, more of an encyclopedia, I would say, of frequently asked questions. So they're going to be there. We'll have our calculator library. We're going to talk about that and walk through next week. So looking forward to having you here for that. The guides that we have available on our site right now are the Advanced Extraction Guide, the Distillation Guide. We have several other resources, lots of white papers. Oh my gosh.
We got ethanol white papers. Yeah, you'll hear all my my negativity on ethanol extraction. I'm really stirring the pot.
You do stir the pot.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
You must be an analytical chemist or something, because they do stir the pot. All right. Michael, thank you. Thank you, Jeremiah. Lots of shout outs. Really good. I appreciate you being here. Looking forward to you next week. Invite your friends. Congratulations again to Dee Parker. Go watch. A lot of our resources and courses are right on YouTube. So you can go to our YouTube channel and you can connect into that through some of our blogs. We've got some of our blogs have videos and that kind of thing. So we are, we're good. Next week, calculators. Anything else we need to shout out?
No, I think that's it.
Thank you for being here on facilities. We're good, and we will see you next week. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. See you next week.
Bye now.
Are you stuck in your hemp or cannabis business? Are you not reaching your processing goals? Here at Extract Lab, we offer a free 20-minute CBD jam session. A CBD jam session is a conversation with an industry expert, not a sales call. A conversation where you can talk to us about whatever issues you are having right now and where you are stuck. We will help you uncover any issues you are currently having in your business, create a solution to fit your current scale, develop a future scale-up plan based on your needs, and help you make your processing goals a reality, all while getting your business plan back on track. Schedule your free 20-minute CBD jam session at 1-651-600-0036. Again, that number is 1-651-600-0036.